Welcome back to the studio and to my custom palette building series. In this series, you'll be joining me as I choose 15 watercolor pans for this travel pan set. I'm taking this set to Australia with me when I travel for work in about a week and a half, and I thought that this would be the perfect opportunity to share with you how I go about choosing my watercolor paints for a custom palette, and also give you some strategies so that you can build your very own custom palette that's perfect for you. In the last episode, I talked about choosing your primary cyan, magenta, yellow triad. In this segment, I'm going to focus on choosing secondary and complementary colors. Over on my drawing board here, I've got 4 different color wheels. The first one is what I painted out in the last episode. These are my 3 choices for a cyan, magenta, yellow triad. Of course, your color choices will be slightly different. And all of the secondary colors that you can mix using only those 3 paints. As you can see, you can mix quite a range of bright, saturated colors with only these 3 colors. However, in my case particularly, you lose some brightness, particularly in the orange and red segment, because this PY150 and this PR122 mix quite far apart. You can give yourself a bigger mixing range and more flexibility when mixing by choosing colors that fit in between the 3 primary colors that you chose in the last episode. One common approach to filling in the blanks in the color wheel is to do something called a split primary triad, where in addition to your cyan, magenta, and yellow triad, you also choose a separate triad that's got a blue, a red, and a lemon yellow. While this does give you some more coverage around the wheel, and it does allow you to mix brighter versions of your secondary colors, this is not my preferred approach. I prefer a different method of filling in my watercolor wheel. Rather than choosing a split primary triad, I prefer to choose primary and secondary colors, or a complementary color palette. This way, in addition to cyan, magenta, and yellow, I will also have green, purple, and orange. This has 2 advantages. The first one is that the gaps between your colors are always smaller. The main advantage of choosing this method is that when you choose secondary colors or complementary colors, you now have colors across the color wheel from each other, which allows you to easily mix neutral and dark colors. When you have a primary triad, or even a split primary triad, you need to mix 3 different colors to get a black or a neutral color. In a complementary color system, you only have to mix across the color wheel. So for example, if I mix my magenta color with the green across from it, I will get a range of grays and neutrals. This makes mixing with a limited palette much simpler. So when choosing my 4th, 5th, and 6th colors for my watercolor palette, I'm going to be focusing on looking for complementary colors. One last thing to consider though, is that depending on the colors that you chose for your cyan, magenta, and yellow triad, you may not have your colors perfectly spread around the color wheel. So for example, going back to the palette that I chose, as I previously discussed, even though in this diagram I showed them evenly spaced, my yellow and my magenta are actually a little bit further apart, whereas my cyan and my yellow are a little bit closer together. Depending on which colors you chose, you may have an even more pronounced shift of your colors. You may also have preferences of colors that you like more or less. So you should definitely focus only on colors that you love and you love working with, but also try to find pairs of complementary colors as you work through so that you can easily mix neutral colors. Video, just like in the previous one, I'll be swatching a number of different paints to show you some options for the kinds of secondary and complementary colors that you might consider for your palette. Before I get into that though, I do want to just take a moment to discuss shopping. I am very deliberately not promoting any particular watercolor brand in this series. I've done my best to use the common names for paints, but there's still bound to be some confusion because different brands will make up their own names for the same pigments in a tube of paint. So you could look at my swatches, see me swatching something like a quinacridone magenta, go and buy a quinacridone magenta from your favorite brand, and find out that they use a completely different pigment and it looks very different from what I swatched. The easiest way to solve this problem is to shop by pigments. I've made a point of including pigment information for all of the colors that I swatch. You can also, on my website, I've made a spreadsheet of pigments, of single pigment paints by brands, for several brands, so you can go and cross-compare on my website. I'll leave that link down below. Another option, if you are more of a visual person and you don't like spreadsheets, is something like this. This is the Jackson's watercolor catalog. This is a free product. I will leave an affiliate link down below, but it is completely free. And so you can get this even if you're not going to buy anything else from Jackson's. This catalog has color swatches from all of the different brands that Jackson's carries, which is the majority of professional watercolor brands. In this catalog, they have their color swatches, and they also have pigment information for each color. So if you are looking for a specific color or a specific pigment, you can get one of these and go find the brand that you're looking for and see the pigment information there. So with that, without further ado, let's get into some swatching. I included this first color, PY153 Indian Yellow, in my previous segment, but I wanted to show that even if you didn't include a color when I first swatched it, you can still have a chance to include it if you really like that color later. For example, if you included a lemon yellow earlier in this series, you might prefer to include an Indian Yellow now. Alternatively, you could include an orange, like this Chrome Orange by Schmincke, which mixes with PB29 and ultramarine to create some very near black neutrals. My next option is more of a middle orange. It's transparent Pyrrole Orange, which is one of my favorite orange pigments. It's available from a few different brands, and there's a few different shades of it. Here I've mixed it with PB156 Phthalo Sapphire Blue to create, it's a very, very deep green is what it mixes. It's the closest that it gets to black. You can also choose something that's more on the reddish end of the spectrum, something like this PR255, which I've mixed with a cyan to create a sort of purpley neutral tone. Finally, my choice for what I'm going to include in this palette is PO107, and there's a star next to that because this pigment hasn't officially received a pigment number yet. It's only available from Winsor & Newton. It's their transparent orange, and it is even more vibrant than transparent Pyrrole Orange, although it's a very similar compound, And I'm mixing it here with a PB60, which is a neutralized reddish blue, to create a range of near black neutrals. Moving into the teal to green to greenish yellow range, now we have a PG7, which is a phthalo green blue shade, which you can mix with a red like Perylene Dark Red PR178 to create a range of grays, violets, and teals, very dark valued. Alternatively, you can start with a green that's already very dark valued, like Perylene Green. So this won't add to your mixing range very much, but it will create some very stunning dark shadow colors when mixed with pretty much any reddish tone. Many of the most common greens are actually mixes of different pigments, like this sap green, which you can again mix with one of your magentas to create a range of browns to grays. Alternatively, you could choose a much brighter green, like this May green or a spring green. Here I've been sort of silly about how I've mixed it, but I've mixed it with PV55, which is a reddish violet. And again, you can see you can create some interesting neutrals with a very bright springy green if that's something that you're interested in. Another option is a greenish yellow, like this muted green gold. This mixes a number of deep dark browns and plummy colors when it's mixed with a purple like Dioxazine Violet. Finally, my choice for this palette is PG36 Phthalo Green Yellow shade, which is more of a middle green. It's similar to PG7, but it's more yellowish. And here you can see that if you mix it with a magenta, particularly a warmer magenta, you can mix some very near black neutrals. Now moving on to violets, purples, and blues. Here, PV55 is quinacridone violet or quinacridone purple. Again, I've mixed it with May green. Alternatively, PV23 is Dioxazine Violet. It's a very vibrant purple, and here I've mixed it with a lemon yellow to create this range of dark browns and plums. You can also do something like an ultramarine violet, which again I've mixed with a lemon yellow here, and you can see that mixes again some very muted grayish tones. PB29, which is ultramarine blue, can be mixed with any kind of orange to create deep, dark grays. They're granulating because PB29 is granulating. And finally, my choice is PB60, which is a more muted reddish blue. And I am mixing that here with my PO107, the transparent orange, which you can see mixes blacks and very muted browns and blues. Now here are my swatches all together. Hopefully this can help you choose your secondary and complementary colors. I had intended to film some footage of me painting in this color wheel, but unfortunately I forgot to turn on my camera because I'm a dummy. So here is my finished color wheel with my CMY and my secondary colors. You can see I've got a green across from the magenta, which mixes some muted purples and teals. And I also chose an indanthrene blue and a transparent orange, which aren't across from my CMY primaries, but do neutralize each other to create a range of blacks, browns, and deep blues. I've also still got the cyan and yellow that I chose in the previous step. This selection of 6 colors will allow me to mix a wide range of bright saturated colors as well as muted colors and neutral colors. I want to again draw your attention to how my color wheel doesn't look exactly like the perfectly spread out color wheel models that I showed you at the beginning of the episode. Instead, I focused on choosing colors that neutralize each other but also really appeal to me, colors that I enjoy and that I enjoy working with. I hope that in building your palette, you'll also choose colors that you really enjoy and you really enjoy working with. In the next episode, I will be breaking away from choosing bright saturated colors for mixing, and instead I will be guiding you through choosing earth tones and dark colors to help you conveniently paint your favorite subjects. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so that you'll be notified when my next video comes out. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments what colors you would choose for a palette. Would you stick with a secondary and complementary color palette like I chose, or would you go for perhaps a split primary triad? Let's have a discussion down in the comments. Have a great day painting, and I'll see you in the next one.